My mother-in-law spent Thanksgiving dinner explaining why my marketing degree and fellowship were wasted on someone like me. My name is Laura Phillips Harrison. I'm 55 years old, and I'd spent 25 years believing the woman sitting across from me at that table genuinely cared about our family. I'm just saying, Karen said, passing the sweet potatoes to my daughter while looking directly at me. Some women are meant for careers and some are meant for other things. 78 years old and she could make other things sound like garbage collection. Marketing is such a demanding field. She smiled at the sister-in-law who worked in pharmaceutical sales. Sarah kept working after her children were born. That takes real dedication. I wanted family dinner. She wanted performance art. My husband Richard sat to my left, 57 years old and silent as always. He cut his turkey with surgical precision, nodded occasionally, said nothing. Of course, Laura had that fellowship back in the day. Karen's voice carried an edge I couldn't quite place. Consumer psychology, wasn't it? Some people think advanced degrees and fellowships make them better than everyone else. The bitterness in those words felt personal, specific, like she was talking about someone else entirely. But children need their mothers. She refilled my wine glass without asking. You made the right choice, Laura, even if it's been expensive for Richard. There it was, the financial drain comment. She made one at every gathering, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. Mom, the daughter said quietly, I'm complimenting her sacrifice, sweetheart. Karen touched my daughter's hand. Though I do think if you're going to stay home, you should at least... She looked at my plate. Watch your portions. 20 years of these comments. 20 years of me sitting there absorbing them like they were weather. Inevitable. Unavoidable. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My hazel eyes looked tired. My shoulder-length hair needed styling. My cream silk blouse felt expensive and wrong, like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. 2 weeks earlier, I'd received a LinkedIn message from Jamie Chen, a former colleague from my marketing days. A consulting opportunity, real work. The kind I used to do when I was 28 and good at something. I'd been too anxious to respond. Because Jamie had worked with Laura Phillips, who could analyze demographic data and predict consumer behavior. Not Laura Harrison, who clipped coupons and apologized for existing. That night, after the in-laws left, I confronted Richard about his silence. You just sat there. She doesn't mean it the way it sounds. He loaded the dishwasher without looking at me. She called me a financial drain at Thanksgiving dinner. She's old. She says things. 20 years of she says things. 20 years of me waiting for him to choose me over. Avoiding conflict. I mentioned you could go back to work. He closed the dishwasher. A few times over the years, when the kids were in school. I stared at him. What? You always had reasons why you couldn't. He finally looked at me. Eventually, I agreed with Mom that you seemed to use martyrdom as an excuse. The room tilted slightly. You agreed with her? You made it impossible to help you, Laura. Not, she was wrong to say it. Not, I should have defended you. Just agreement. Quiet. Accepted. For how long? I went to my laptop and started searching old emails. Found them buried in folders I'd forgotten existed. Richard, 15 years ago. Maybe look into some part-time consulting when the kids are older. My response, 800 words about why I couldn't possibly manage it. The kids' schedules. My anxiety about being outdated. My fear of rejection. Richard, 12 years ago. That marketing firm downtown mentioned they hire experienced people sometimes. My response, 600 words listing every reason I wasn't qualified anymore. I'd built my own cage, bar by bar, email by email. Then blamed others for locking me inside. But then I scrolled further, found something else. 12 years ago, I'd started researching positions. Actually researching. Marketing coordinator roles. Brand strategist positions. Entry-level jobs at firms that valued experience. I'd applied to 7 positions in 3 months. 7 rejections. I'd forgotten this entire period. The memory just gone. Erased by failure. More emails, more applications. 11 years ago. 10 years ago. Reaching out to old contacts who didn't respond. Updating my resume over and over. Each version slightly more desperate than the last. The final application was 5 years ago. For a junior position at a firm I'd been senior to 20 years earlier. They'd rejected me too. I'd stopped trying after that. Just stopped. And apparently I deleted the memory of trying at all. 15 jobs. Qualified positions. 7 years of effort I'd somehow forgotten because the repeated rejection was too painful to hold. I opened our joint account statements to prove I hadn't been wasteful with money. that the financial drain comments were exaggerated. Found something else instead, small transfers, $200 here, $350 there, marked as personal expenses in Richard's handwriting on the paper statements. I started scrolling faster, tracking dates, finding patterns, monthly transfers, sometimes twice monthly, different amounts but consistent timing. Birthday months, holidays, graduations. I took screenshots, saved them to my desktop, kept scrolling, 15 years of transfers. The amounts varied, but the pattern held. I created a new folder, named it Evidence, because even with anxiety paralyzing me professionally, I was still methodical, still detail-oriented, still the woman who'd once analyzed consumer behavior patterns for a living. My financial dependence had been partly my own fear. That was true. I'd seen Richard's half-hearted suggestions and responded with anxiety-fueled excuses. I'd trained myself to need nothing from him, which meant I'd stopped seeing that partnership required asking. But something else was wrong here. These transfers, the pattern, the consistency, and those rejections. 15 qualified positions over 7 years. I'd blamed myself, believed I was unemployable, that the 25-year gap made me worthless. But what if something else had happened? I had no way to investigate, no way to know why companies had turned down someone with my credentials and experience. The rejection emails were generic, professional. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. I opened LinkedIn, found Jamie's message waiting, started typing. My fingers shook slightly. 30 years of marketing training, and I couldn't compose a simple professional message without anxiety telling me I'd screw it up. I wrote 4 sentences, deleted them, wrote 3 more, deleted those too. Jamie, I apologize for the delayed response. I'd be very interested in discussing the consulting opportunity. Would you be available for a call next week? Best, Laura. Professional. Competent. Not desperate. I hit send before I could delete it again. Then I opened the evidence folder, added the screenshots of the suspicious transfers, created a simple spreadsheet tracking dates and amounts. $78,000 over 15 years. The number shocked me. I'd seen the individual transfers, but totaled up like this, they told a different story. I stared at the screen, at the patterns I'd spent 25 years learning to recognize, the same skills that had made me successful at analyzing data and predicting behavior. Maybe I wasn't as unemployable as I'd believed. Maybe someone had made sure I'd believe it anyway. I saved everything, backed it up to cloud storage, because evidence doesn't mean anything if you lose it. My phone buzzed. Jamie's response. Great to hear from you. How about Tuesday at 2 p.m.? I typed yes, sent it, sat there wondering if I could actually do this, if I could overcome 25 years of anxiety and inadequacy and fear, if I could become someone who didn't need permission to exist. The evidence folder glowed on my screen. $78,000 in transfers I couldn't explain. 15 rejections I couldn't understand. 25 years of my own fear and someone else's passive acceptance. And now, maybe, a chance to figure out which parts were really mine. The interviewer looked at my resume and asked if I'd been on sabbatical for the past 25 years. Sabbatical? Like I'd been traveling Europe or writing a novel? Not raising 2 children while my career evaporated. My name is Laura Phillips Harrison. I'm 55 years old. And that interview was the first of many humiliations in what would become the worst and best year of my life. Sarah had hesitated when we met for coffee, her hands wrapped around her mug like she was bracing herself. We'd worked together 25 years ago when I was brilliant and she was ambitious and neither of us had children yet. Now she was successful and I was desperate. Jamie's consulting position fell through, she said. But there's something else, junior level. It's a risk recommending someone with your gap. She paused, then, your work was exceptional. Once, past tense, evidence she wasn't sure anymore. The firm she sent me to was one I'd applied to 3 years earlier. I didn't remember it until I walked in. Just another rejection in a sea of them, years when I'd stopped counting because the math was too devastating. 3 interviewers in 4 hours. Each one found creative ways to question my relevance, my age, my gap. One asked if I was comfortable with technology, while a 26-year-old took notes on her laptop. They rejected me by email that evening. Professional courtesy, they called it. Sarah helped me apply to a smaller firm. This is the last favor I can offer without damaging my own reputation, she said. Not cruel, just honest. I was a liability she was spending finite credibility on. The training period was designed for recent graduates. I sat in a room with people young enough to be my children, struggling with software they'd learned in college while I'd been packing school lunches. A kid named Marcus explained demographic targeting to me slowly, like I was his grandmother. I was paralyzed before my first presentation. 45 minutes in my car, breathing exercises I'd learned from YouTube, forcing myself to walk into that conference room. I felt invisible in team meetings. People looked past me when I spoke, waiting for younger voices. My first solo project was a retail campaign targeting suburban mothers. I misread the demographic data, confused age brackets that would have been obvious to me at 30, and created ads that fell completely flat. The client was furious. My supervisor called it a learning experience, but I saw the doubt in his face. Richard made comments. "Still enjoying your midlife crisis?" He'd say when I came home exhausted. Not angry, just dismissive. Like my attempt at rebuilding a career was a hobby that would pass. A younger colleague named Emma pulled me aside after the failed campaign. "Try again," she said. "I judged you when you started. I was wrong." She admitted it. The judgment. Most people just thought it quietly. I started seeing a therapist to work through the anxiety, the inadequacy, the voice that said maybe Richard was right, maybe I was wasting time. My second project was cautious, competent. A retail chain rebrand that increased sales by 18% over 8 months. Not brilliant, just careful enough not to fail. They offered me a permanent position at $85,000. Over the next 18 months, I completed 4 more campaigns. Each one successful, each one exhausting. I still had moments of panic before major presentations, still felt like an imposter surrounded by people who belonged there naturally. My salary increased to $120,000, 3 years after that first rejection. 3 years of clawing my way back from nothing. And then, 3 years after the Thanksgiving confrontation that changed everything, Richard's parents arrived early. Karen Harrison walked into our house at 81 looking 10 years older. She'd always been critical, comments about my housekeeping, my parenting, my worth, but today she looked desperate. "We need to talk privately," she said. The father-in-law sat silent while Karen explained. Real estate investments collapsed. Retirement account nearly empty. House sold to cover debts. "We need help with living expenses and medical bills," she said. "Around $5,000 monthly." Her tone shifted. The criticism I'd endured for decades melted into pleading. "Family helps family. I've always been there for the grandchildren." Then she started listing. Every birthday gift, every Christmas present, every generous contribution over 15 years. Specific amounts, specific dates. I'd been tracking suspicious transfers from our joint account for months. Small amounts marked as personal expenses. The dates matched. "Wait here," I said. I went to my office and pulled the file I'd been building. Spreadsheets, bank statements, 15 years of data. When I returned, I laid it out on the dining table. "These are the gifts you supposedly gave our children." I showed her my spreadsheet, dates and amounts. Then I showed her the transfers from our joint account. Matching dates, matching amounts exactly. $78,000 total. "Richard," I kept my voice level. "Did you know about this?" He denied it. Then he got defensive. Then when I showed him the pattern, 15 years of systematic theft, he admitted to small amounts at first that grew without him realizing. "Why?" I asked. "What was the point?" He became angry, said I was twisting everything. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "And if you don't tell me the truth right now, I'll make sure it comes out in court. I'll subpoena your phone records and emails." He went quiet for a long moment. Then he admitted it. His mother had asked him to funnel money so she could present it as her own gifts. She was on a fixed income and wanted to maintain her role as the generous grandmother. "Did you understand this made me look inadequate?" I asked. He said quietly, "My mother mentioned it would be good for the children to see where real support came from." The room tilted. This wasn't just theft. This was a 15-year scheme to make me look worthless to my own children, to reinforce my financial dependence, my inadequacy, while I was home raising them. While I believed we were partners. "What else did you hide?" I asked. "That's all," he said. But I remembered something. The rejections, years of them, dozens of positions I'd been qualified for. "Did you tell your mother about my job applications?" He went very quiet. "Richard, did you tell her?" "She asked me to keep her informed," he said finally. "About what you were doing." "What does that mean?" "She wanted to know if you were really serious about working or just making a show of it." My hands were shaking. "How many applications did you tell her about?" "When?" "She asked me to inform her starting 12 years ago. I continued until about 5 years ago, when you stopped applying." 12 years ago, I'd started my first serious job search. 5 years ago, I'd given up entirely after years of rejections. 7 years. He'd reported every application to his mother for 7 years. Did you know she was interfering? I asked. He denied it. Then he admitted his mother had mentioned making some calls to verify my qualifications, but he hadn't thought she was doing anything harmful. When did you suspect something was wrong? He became defensive, shifted in his chair. Maybe 4 or 5 years in. I wondered if she was saying things to the companies, but I never asked because part of me agreed the children needed you at home. Part of him agreed. 7 years of sabotage, 7 years of reporting my every attempt to escape to the woman who was destroying them, and part of him thought that was right. The conspiracy had lasted 7 years, but I still had no proof of what Karen had actually done. Just suspicion, pattern, betrayal from the two people who should have protected me. I won't be providing any financial support, I said. Karen's face transformed. The pleading vanished. Pure rage replaced it. I'll tell everyone, she said. Everyone in this family and this community. What kind of daughter-in-law abandons elderly parents in need? You'll be ruined. I looked at her. This woman who'd spent years cutting me down, who'd stolen my money and my career and my children's respect. Do what you need to, I said. But as they left, I understood something clearly. This wasn't the end of the battle. This was only the beginning. My mother-in-law called me 11 times in 3 days, and when I stopped answering, she recruited reinforcements. My name is Laura Phillips Harrison. I'm 55 years old, and I was about to discover that my 12-year career drought wasn't bad luck or personal failure. It was sabotage. The calls came in waves. His sister first, voice tight with rehearsed outrage about my selfishness and abandonment of family values. Then 2 aunts I barely knew. Then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them reading from the same script about how family took care of each other, and I was destroying everything over money. I wanted to defend myself. They wanted to perform loyalty for Karen. That's an important distinction. Tuesday morning, my husband's brother cornered me in my office parking lot. Richard's younger brother, early 50s, red-faced and gesturing wildly, while I stood there with my laptop bag. You're tearing this family apart over what? Your pride? I stared at him. Your mother stole $78,000 from my children's futures. She needed help and you abandoned her. I walked past him toward the building. Some conversations don't deserve participation. That afternoon, Karen posted on Facebook a long, rambling thing about ungrateful daughters-in-law who forgot Christian values and family loyalty. She tagged the sister-in-law, both aunts, multiple cousins. The comment section filled with people who had no idea what they were supporting. Thursday, she showed up at my office building. Security called me down. There she was in the lobby, 78 years old and vibrating with righteous fury, demanding to speak with me about my cruelty. Ma'am, you need to leave, the security guard said. I'm her mother-in-law. I have a right. No right to harass employees. Let's go? She came back Friday. Same performance, same result. Security escorted her out while she shouted about abandonment and betrayal, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Monday morning, my supervisor called me in. Janet closed her office door and gestured to a chair. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, someone who'd built her career on reading situations accurately. We received 2 calls, she said. Someone claiming to be a concerned family member, warning us you're unstable, going through a difficult divorce. My stomach dropped. I don't believe it, Janet continued. You've been nothing but professional. But, Laura, this firm can't tolerate drama affecting our reputation. I understand. There's something else. She pulled a file from her desk. You applied here 5 years ago, during your first attempt to return to work. I'd forgotten that. The rejection had been one of dozens that year. We received a concerning reference call, Janet said. It led to your rejection. She opened the file and turned it toward me. Notes from someone claiming to be my former colleague from Whitman Marketing. 25 years ago, real company. Real dates of employment. The reference described me as unreliable and difficult to manage. There's a callback number for verification, Janet said. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my contacts, found Karen's landline. The numbers matched. The room tilted, not metaphorically. Actually tilted like the floor had become a ship's deck in a storm. Laura? That's my mother-in-law's phone number. Janet went very still. Are you certain? I showed her the contact entry on my phone. Same 10 digits, 7 years of rejections. I'd applied to positions from age 43 to 50, received constant rejections, convinced myself I was unemployable, stopped trying at 50, sank into depression I hid from everyone. Not inadequacy, Sabotage. Karen had posed as someone from my real employment history, making it impossible to detect. How many companies had she called? How many futures had she stolen with her credible lies and my actual work history? 15 potential jobs, the chapter beat said. At least. During the years when returning to work would have been easier, when the kids were in high school, when my resume gap was 12 years instead of 25. She didn't just take my present, she took my past and weaponized it against my future. I need copies of this file, I said. Janet made them without asking questions. I went home and found Richard in the kitchen. My husband of 28 years, 57 years old, already looking diminished even though the divorce hadn't started yet. I put the file on the counter between us. Your mother's phone number? In my rejection file from 3 years ago? He stared at it, said nothing. Did you know she was calling companies and lying about my work history? Long silence. I suspected she might be interfering. Suspected. I didn't want to confirm it. Of course not. Confirmation requires action. And Richard had spent 57 years perfecting the art of looking the other way. How many companies did you tell her about? She asked about every application. She said she wanted to help. For how long? She started asking when you began applying seriously, when Marcus started high school. 7 years. From age 43 to 50. Every application I'd agonized over, every cover letter I'd revised 100 times, every interview outfit I'd chosen carefully, trying so hard to prove I still had value. And he told his mother about all of it, while she destroyed them one by one. You enabled 7 years of a career sabotage, I said. You watched me struggle and fail and convinced yourself you didn't know for certain. Laura, I'm filing for divorce. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment I could afford on my $120,000 salary. Small, quiet, mine. I needed to understand who I was dealing with. So I called Richard's Aunt Margaret, his mother's sister-in-law, someone who'd always seemed kind at family gatherings. 74 years old, sharp-minded, someone who'd known the family for decades. She was hesitant at first. Laura, family matters are complicated. Your sister-in-law sabotaged my career for 7 years by impersonating my former colleagues. Silence. Then, she did what? I explained. The phone number, the reference calls, the systematic destruction. That woman, Margaret said, voice tight with anger. You deserve to know the truth. Karen had received a prestigious fellowship 32 years ago, Margaret explained. Education policy research. Career-making opportunity. She was brilliant, Margaret said. Everyone knew she'd end up in state policy, maybe national. What happened? Her mother-in-law happened. Richard's grandmother convinced her the fellowship would destroy her marriage and damage Richard. He was 4 years old then. The pattern clicked into place. Karen turned it down, Margaret continued, and her mother-in-law spent years telling her she'd made the right choice while also making comments about how educated women thought they were better than everyone else. I was there for some of it. I watched Karen become bitter over decades. Karen had experienced the same sabotage she'd inflicted on me. Her own mother-in-law had stolen her future just like Karen had tried to steal mine. But understanding doesn't equal excusing. She's been resenting that choice for 32 years, Margaret said. She never talked about it directly, but the whole family knew. So she decided to make sure no other woman in the family had the choice she'd been denied. I think seeing you have options she never had was unbearable for her. I thanked Margaret and ended the call. Sat in my small apartment thinking about cycles of sabotage passed down like family heirlooms. Karen's mother-in-law had destroyed her fellowship opportunity. Karen had spent 32 years becoming the same kind of poison she'd ingested. Now she tried to do it to me. But I'd escaped. And I had $60,000 in savings I carefully built during my 2 years of work and a very specific idea about what to do with it. I called it the Second Chance Career Fund. Help for women over 40 re-entering the workforce after caregiving gaps. The trap I'd almost died in. 5 women first. Weekly meetings in coffee shops in my cramped apartment living room. Resume building. Interview prep. Sharing the reality of age discrimination and family sabotage without shame. You're not starting over, I told them. You're restarting with wisdom they don't have. The fund started gaining attention from local women's organizations, media requests, speaking opportunities, and then the letter arrived. Law offices of Patterson and Schmidt, threatening legal action for elder abandonment, demanding mediation, claiming I had a legal and moral obligation to support my aging mother-in-law who had given so much to our family. I stood in my apartment holding the letter, understanding with perfect clarity. Karen would escalate this fight until one of us was completely destroyed. She'd chosen war. Fine. I'd give her one. My daughter called me 3 days after Thanksgiving with concerns about abandoning family legacy. Grandma says you're betraying everything she taught you about mothers putting family first, Melissa said. 29 years old, and she still believed the woman who'd been poisoning our relationship for decades. I wanted to defend myself. She wanted me to apologize. That's an important distinction. Your grandmother has been sabotaging my career for 7 years, I said. She called my potential employers pretending to be a former colleague and gave false references. Silence. Then, Mom, she wouldn't do that. I have documentation, phone records, the supervisor's notes from one of the calls. My name is Laura Phillips Harrison. I'm 55, and I just spent 25 years being too polite to say what needed saying. More silence. Then Melissa's voice shifted. She told us she's been secretly supporting the household for years, that you were too proud to accept help. We believed her because she always had money for generous gifts. There it was. The crack. Your father gave her $78,000 from our joint account over 12 years, I said. She didn't give us gifts. She gave us our own money back and took credit. What? Every birthday check, every Christmas present, all of it came from the account your father and I shared. She wasn't generous. She was performing generosity with stolen funds. The sound Melissa made wasn't quite a gasp, more like something breaking. Jacob and I, we thought you were ungrateful. We thought she was saving you financially while you, oh my God. Mom. I wanted absolution. She wanted to undo years of believing lies. Neither of us could have what we wanted. You were manipulated, I said. That's what she does. Jacob called 2 hours later. My son, 27, finishing his graduate degree on his father's dime. I confronted Dad, he said without preamble. He admitted Grandma asked him years ago to make you look bad, so we wouldn't respect your career ambitions if you ever tried to work again. The words landed like evidence I already knew but hadn't wanted to see. She planned this, Jacob continued, for years. She knew if we thought you were financially dependent and professionally inadequate, we'd side with Dad and Grandma in any conflict. Dad said she asked him to do it when I was 10. 17 years of deliberate character assassination. Not cruelty, strategy. I told him I want nothing more from him, Jacob said. Graduate school can wait. I'm done being his leverage. The attorney's letter arrived 4 days later. The mother-in-law had hired legal counsel claiming I'd stolen family funds by refusing to help with the father-in-law's medical expenses. Legal threats from someone who'd stolen $78,000. The audacity was almost impressive. Then she contacted Pastor Michael from our church. He called me within hours asking to meet for coffee to discuss Christian forgiveness and family obligations. I understand Karen has made mistakes, he said over lukewarm coffee at the diner downtown. But family is sacred, Laura. Reconciliation is always possible with God's grace. I wanted understanding. He wanted compliance. The pattern never changed. She sabotaged my career for 7 years, I said. She turned my children against me. She and my husband stole money and gaslit me about my worth for 12 years. That's not mistakes. That's premeditated destruction. But forgiveness? Forgiveness doesn't mean enabling continued harm. He looked uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort meant thinking. 2 weeks later, Karen discovered the Second Chance Career Fund was holding its first public donor event. I'd been posting promotional content on the fund's social media pages. Recipients were scheduled to share their stories. She showed up with Richard and his sister wearing matching Family First t-shirts and carrying signs about ungrateful daughters-in-law destroying families. They positioned themselves near the entrance, talking to donors, warning them about my cruelty toward elderly parents in need. The event coordinator found me in the conference room. Should I call the police? No, I said, let them protest. Because I'd spent 25 years being silenced, and I was done. During my scheduled speech about the fund's mission, I looked directly at the window where Karen's Family First sign was visible. The woman outside with that sign is my mother-in-law, I told the audience of 90 donors and fund recipients. She sabotaged my career for 7 years by calling potential employers and posing as a former colleague to give false references. I displayed the supervisor's notes on the screen. Her phone number highlighted in yellow. My husband gave her $78,000 from our joint account over 12 years so she could present it as her own gifts, to make me look inadequate, financially dependent, professionally worthless. The bank records went up next, every transfer, every date, 12 years of theft in columns and rows. She's demanding money now because I finally succeeded despite the sabotage. This is why the fund exists, to help women whose families economically trapped and sabotaged them. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. Karen tried to leave, But phones were already out, recording, filming, posting. The video went viral within hours. A local reporter at the event wrote an article that went viral by morning. Thousands of comments supporting me, condemning her. Her church friends started distancing themselves. Richard's employer called him in to discuss the negative attention affecting the company's reputation. 3 days later, Melissa appeared at my apartment. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I believed her for years. I'm horrified by what she did." Jacob reconciled too. Said Richard had threatened to cut off his graduate school funding if he sided with me, but after seeing the evidence, he told Richard he wanted nothing more from him. I wanted their support 15 years ago. They gave it now. Better late than absent. Karen made one final attempt. She appeared at my apartment with the father-in-law and Richard. Demanding to talk, I agreed to listen. "I was trying to protect the family," Karen said. "I genuinely believed working mothers damaged their children." "Why did you sabotage 15 job applications over 7 years?" I asked. Her face flushed. "I was trying to save my grandchildren from the same absent mother I was forced to become when I gave up my fellowship." There it was. The truth under all the lies. She'd sacrificed her career and spent 32 years making me pay for it. "Understanding your pain doesn't excuse 7 years of deliberate sabotage," I said. "The relationship is over." Richard stepped forward. "Is there anything I can do to fix the marriage? You would have needed to stand up to your mother 15 years ago. You chose not to. That choice has consequences. You're going to regret this when you're old and alone," Karen spat. "I'd rather be alone than diminished." The divorce finalized 6 months after filing. 2 years brought promotions. Director at $165,000, senior director at $215,000 plus consulting fees. Total income, $270,000. The Second Chance a Career Fund helped 73 women return to work. Combined salaries, $3.2 million. A national grant funded expansion to 3 cities. Karen and the father-in-law declared bankruptcy. Moved to a subsidized apartment where the sister-in-law lived. Melissa mentioned in passing that Karen was working retail there, still complaining to anyone who would listen. Richard remained in the family home, paying $3,000 monthly in spousal support, looking diminished when I saw him at Melissa's birthday dinner. Both kids rebuilt their relationships with me, volunteered with the fund. 2 years and 9 months after the divorce, I stood in the fund's new dedicated office space, bright corner suite downtown. 50 women filled the conference room, current recipients and graduates mentoring others. The younger colleague who'd encouraged me years ago now ran corporate partnerships at $95,000. Her first senior role. I was scheduled to speak at a national conference next month about career reentry programs for women over 40. Melissa arrived to help coordinate the mentorship matching event. We work together easily now. A relationship rebuilt on honesty rather than martyrdom. A reporter from a national business magazine was profiling the fund's success, interviewing me about scaling the program nationwide. I watched the women connecting with mentors and employers, hope replacing shame in their faces. Somewhere in another state, Karen was still telling anyone who would listen that her ungrateful daughter-in-law had abandoned her, but fewer people believed it now. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from another woman who'd seen the viral video, asking if the fund could help her after her own family had sabotaged her career. I smiled and replied immediately with the intake form. The best revenge wasn't Karen's poverty or Richard's loneliness. It was my transformation from woman who shrank herself to prove her worth into woman who expanded herself and used that success to help others escape the same traps. I was no longer the invisible woman at Thanksgiving dinner. I'd made myself seen, and now I was helping others do the same. My worth wasn't defined by people who'd tried to diminish it. It was defined by the impact I created despite them.